Hey, everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. And we are very happy to welcome to the show Jon Westhoff. It should be a very familiar... Get that in the edit. It should be a very familiar name, as when we were part of the Earth 2 network, Jon was one of the grand poobahs of that. Yes, I called you a poobah. So, Jon's here in his capacity as a publisher of Part-time Comix. He, as I said previously, the publisher of Kingbone Press. He's a writer, editor, letterer, and lover of Kenny Rogers impersonators. Factoring in there, and he's here to discuss his latest book, where there's an active Kickstarter for it, C.P.S. Child Posession Services, which he has created with his longtime, in fact, 10-year collaborator, Bobgar Ornelas. So, Jon, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Well, thank you all for having me. Yeah, thank you for mentioning all of my failures and things that I've quit right off the top of the show. Right behind me is a drum set. Bill, I also quit a few bands. Haven't been in a band, so we can just keep going down the list. Yeah, no. I feel bad now. I had actually forgotten. That's so long for the Earth 2 podcast network.
Yeah. So at the peak, how many shows were there? It was like about 6 or 7, right?
Yeah, I want to say 6 was our max. 5, 6. Yeah, Bob had like 3 shows. Yeah, you guys, roommates. Yeah, we had quite a few.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I have to say, Jon is one of my favorite people in comics that I know. One of my absolute favorite people. If you see him, you hug him. That's just the way it is.
Thank you.
All
right, Jon Runyon. I've not earned my H. I have not won a trial by combat, so I am Jon Jon.
And you'll see that as we're going through, Jon, that we have some people chime in and consistently have been on our Thursday nights here. So this is the first time I think you've been actually a guest on the show. I definitely guested with you and Bobgar before.
Yes,
and I think we did like a jam episode where a bunch of us were all together. Yeah. But I think this is your actual first time on the show, and this is good because we have a custom on this show that when we have a guest on, there's one question that always gets asked, and that is, and this is something I don't know, so I'm really interested to hear this. How did you first get into comics?
How did I first get into comics? Well, first off, yes, thanks for having me on the show. I'm sorry it's been so many. Gosh, you guys have been on 6, 7 years now.
We actually are on April. It'll be 9 years.
9 years. Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I only met the hairy and heavy part, so I actually didn't know until recently that I was allowed to break the third H, which also isn't in my name. So maybe when I become that H, I'll be JOHN. But however, if you do back my Kickstarter, I am willing, to offer up services. But anyway, how did I get into comics? I was very fortunate. I have 2 wonderful women in my life. My grandmother was the first one. I think just because she ran a cleaning company and it was close to a comic shop. She used to read Archie and comics like that when she was younger, and she saw it and brought us in one day, and I picked up my first or second book was Amazing Spider-Man 332, where Venom's jumping at you on the cover, and I was pretty much hooked since. So she would take me back. My mother would take me back. She was a big supporter of that. So, yeah, it's thanks to them that I sit here before you right now. So.
And in terms of comics, who are some of your favorite creators? Who are some of the people that kind of kept you in the game there?
Well, it definitely my favorite Spider-Man artist growing up was Eric Larson was my first. Mark Bagley, I followed him. Sam Keith, followed whatever he would do. So I kind of followed the artists, even though I ended up being a writer. But yeah, those were the ones that I followed the most early on. I was right before the big Image boom. So, I was pretty big into all those guys, McFarlane and Larson and that group. Was definitely my first 5 or 10 years is a lot of what I read.
And naturally, we're going to post links to the Kickstarter. But how is the Kickstarter going right now?
The Kickstarter's going great. I was a little anxious last week, thinking maybe when we got to sit down today, I would be really tears in my eyes, begging people to to help us fund. But we had a great weekend last weekend. We are funded. We're
cool.
at 2739 or something like that as of this morning. And yeah, we had a great first weekend. Slow couple days after, but we had a great weekend last weekend. We were able to get funded, and now it's just we'll be able to print a lot of extra books, pay my collaborators their dues, and it's a great feeling.
Okay, and in terms of the previous publisher that you discussed that I mentioned, Kingbone Press, why don't you give us just a little squib about some of the books that came out during that time that you were overseeing that imprint?
Well, before I do, are you willing to represent me in court? Should I say anything? Because I am under multiple lawsuits with Bobgar at this time. We're fighting over the company. I don't know if you knew that. No, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, brother, that'll be a small check. All right.
Right. For those who don't know, I met Bill and many other amazing people on the 11 O'Clock Comics message board forum about 10, 11, 12 years ago. And longtime collaborator who's working with me on this new project, Bobgar Ornelas. I kind of joined up with his self-publishing company, and we kind of tried, to take it to the next level. We worked together for about 9-10 years. We put out books like Anthology, which was a music-themed anthology, Bulletproof Chicken, which was like an homage to 80s action over-the-top movies. We put out our first book together was called Apocalypse Man, which was more of like a slice of life book. We had quite a library, for a small publisher.
Mm-hmm. And are some of those still available on Comixology?
Yes, about 75% of our library is on Comixology.
Mm-hmm.
For certain reasons, some was formatting, and other reasons we weren't ever able to get every book up there.
Yeah.
They were really sticklers at first about how you lettered, and unfortunately, being young creators and not doing it right from jump, we'd have to go back and do a significant amount of work. Like World's Strongest Mailman was never able to get up there, but yeah, we have a ton of our books up there. So yeah, Kingbone Press is still strong on Comixology.
Okay, so in terms of what's going on now, Part-time Comix, why don't you give us, usually when we talk about this, we brand it as the elevator pitch Reader's Digest version of what C.P.S. is and what Connie is engaged in that particular book.
So in regards to Part-time Comix, and I appreciate Bill typing it out under here so people can see how to spell it. If you search it on Facebook or on Instagram, Store Envy is our store. Starting a new venture this year. Actually, last year, I kind of got the bug again after taking about a year and a half off, and decided, all these ideas that I've had for a while, I really, wanted to make a push and see what I could do with them. And unfortunately, I picked, just about the worst year ever to do that. So we still had, the wheels turning, and thankfully, you see the fruits of that labor now here in 2021. We're ready to take the next step and try to get some of those books out. But I kicked Bob to the curb. I said, Bob, you're dead weight. You're bringing us down. I got to go on my own. But no, there was no ill feelings. Bob and I, again, we continue to work together. It just felt like we needed kind of a reset. Some of Kingbone Press, we expanded a little too far. We took on a lot of projects from friends and collaborators. And this was just an effort to kind of refocus back. And that way, just sometimes, you grow too far and you kind of need to reset things a little bit. So this is kind of me kind of putting things under my own label, but also working again with great, amazing collaborators, including, I'm so glad that the first book is with Bob. We have some other projects kind of in the wings that we're working on, but we kind of decided to go back to a character which we started at Kingbone Press, which is Connie Dar. She's the star of Child Posession Services, C.P.S. for short. And Connie is a social worker like myself, and she's been in the field for a while, and she's a little bit burnt out. She has a little bit of a unique version of social work in that she is responsible for working with bedeviled children or children who are or were recently possessed. So that, again, that was a character that started as a short with Bob. He needed an 8-page story for an anthology that he was putting together. And honestly, well, Bill may recognize it if he got a chance to glance at it. It really was a tongue-in-cheek kind of jab at Bob because he really loves Constantine the Hellblazer. So I was like, I'm going to make a female Constantine. And she was really, she was very British and over the top. And it was just, going to be this one and done story just to kind of tease my collaborator. And again, he needed a story, and I kind of had the idea of it in my mind. Well, thanks if you're watching. Yeah, you see Connie there. But Bob is really the one who said, wait a minute, because of like the powers you're describing, maybe she's Eastern Indian and she's a woman and it's not so much a joke and she doesn't have a corny British accent. And I'm like, fine, Bob, we'll do it your way. We'll make a real, true character. And I'm so glad that he said that, because it's by far, my favorite thing I've worked on with him. Again, collaborating for 10 or 12 years, we really haven't worked on too many long projects together, just because I was doing other things. He wants to draw his own, original stories. He did B1 comics for so many issues and so many pages. So I actually, felt like I was stealing time away from his own project. But I finally, like this one, we really collaborated together and created this character that we both really enjoy.
All right, cool. I'm not going to bogart this interview. I've got the interview baton. I'm handing it off to Steve. Steve, what have you got for John?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, I just love this character of Connie Dar. And, I didn't... Oh, we've lost Brian. He's just hiding. He's Brian's invisible right now. He's like, I'm gone. I
don't blame you.
I absolutely, just really enjoyed the preview that you provided, and I kind of wish I'd read the original anthology. But I think this is such a great character and such a great concept. And I think James Figueredo, who's joined us tonight, also thinks that Child's Posession Services is such an awesome title and concept. And unfortunately, with Brian disappeared, he's got the magic ability to bring those comment bubbles up.
Yeah.
But
if
I
did want to. He'll be back.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. But I definitely wanted to point out that like it's just a lot of fun to be able to pull something like the general concept of being a social worker, so something from your real life, and really kind of make it very fantastical and extra. Let's just say probably extra dangerous. I'm not sure what kind of social work you're in, but you probably don't have to deal with, possessed murderous children. Well, maybe you do. Maybe you do. I mean, hey.
Well, my first 10 years in the field, I worked in inpatient behavioral health with children and adults. So not too far of a step. Sometimes we feel like, there's full moons or other things happening that are increasing symptoms in our wonderful clients. But yeah, that's kind of the seed of where this started. They say write about what you know, and I said, this time I'm really going to go for it.
Yeah, demons and or personal demons, very from the clients. I think it's great, and I also enjoy, and this is one of the things that I love from the books that Kingbone Press put out that I was reading, the humor that comes through. Like even with the, it's kind of a serious subject, but you've got, that extra sarcastic, bone through line there with the character of Connie Dar. Is this something, I know you're putting it out as a one shot with Kickstarter, but is this something that if and it will, and it's been funded, but if this really takes off, is this something that you want to continue with, and maybe with Part-time Comix, maybe sort of do maybe a quarterly or an annual book related to the character or to the concept?
Definitely. We already have, it is a one shot. It started as the first 8 pages actually are that first story. Then we did a second story that flowed somewhat together. They were 2 shorts. One was in a free comic book day thing we did. So we included them in this book, but then Bob really came up with most of the full story that caps the whole issue. And we sat on it for a while. And again, when the time was right, we came back to it. But we definitely have talked a ton about more stories and more ideas. Again, we like this character. We feel like we're creating a lived-in universe where we can easily tell stories, but we also are realistic. After 10 years, I did a project called Hellbillies with the amazing Bryan Boles for 4 or 5 years. We put out that book, 15 issues, multiple shorts and 300 pages almost it was. And that was great. But I think Bob and I understand that we're probably not going to produce at that level again. We've probably missed that window. So if this takes off and it's super successful and he, he can find the time and the financial support is there, so he's not, having to pick up extra time at work or whatever in his real job, maybe, we definitely have more stories to tell, but we want to try to tell these self-contained stories when we can so that we can continue the universe, but be realistic and not hand somebody and say, this is issue 1 of 12. Because we know for small press publishers, that doesn't bring a lot of people back. Things so much can happen. So let's tell a complete story in each, offering that we're going to put out. But we definitely have more stories.
Awesome. And that's actually one of the things that I was curious about, because being self-published and having a smaller press, and especially with this new venture, it even a little bit takes a lot of time. And we've heard from other other people who've been on the show who have self-published or are working in a smaller press, that it does, it's a lot of work to put out a book. A lot of things that I think readers, we take for granted a lot, especially when you look at, Image or Marvel or DC, we don't always see how the soup is made. And, getting to talk to people who are putting out their book, putting out their own book or who have a small press, a small publisher, we definitely get more information with that. And I these are my favorite type of guests to have on. So of course, thank you again, John, for coming on.
No, I appreciate it. I'm happy to talk about it. And we don't want people to pick up the book and be like, again, I put it kind of right on the title for a reason, Part-time Comix. I don't want people to have, hesitation about the quality or something like that. Mm-hmm. But, it is different, than Marvel. Like you said, I mean, I was even frantically texting and emailing Bob recently, like, should we bring someone else in to draw the next story? We're having success. What if this continues, and he's like, slow down. Like, I think we can, do, a couple issues a year or something like that. We'll figure it out. He's kind of the straight man of the group. So he's got to kind of level my expectations, he's like, we'll tell our stories on our timeline. And then, a couple of years, we have a nice collection of Connie stories. We put that out, we'll see what happens. But, I got kind of excited, about, wanting to get out there and put out more. But it also does work out in small press's favor too. Sometimes you have, again, we've simmered on this story for a good 2 years now. Because of other circumstances. And I feel like it was the right time. And Bob is bringing so much more to that script that I wrote. Well, I helped him finish 2 years ago. And I'm able to change and update characters and make them feel more real. So sometimes it's better to go at your own pace.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a really cool point. And I'm grateful to kind of hear that, because again, if you're just sort of a casual comic reader, or you're not too familiar with, a lot of the other offerings out there, and you're just kind of thinking, books come out on a monthly schedule and they just keep coming out, and I'm sure they're, it's really easy to put together. Well, no, it takes time. It takes a lot of thought and a lot of work. And like you said, this is something that you've been working on for the past couple of years. So, but I'm really excited that you're putting it out, and of course, I've also backed your Kickstarter. So
thank you. That's all.
I'm looking forward to it.
I've gotten what I.
Yes, you got it. Okay, bye. This is a completely non sequitur question. What and actually kind of into your interests and the kind of books that you read normally. What kind of comic series that's out nowadays, doesn't have to be something that's still being printed right now, but it could be something from the past couple of years that you absolutely love, and if you had the opportunity to write for it, you would jump at it in a second. Like what book series, maybe even just a character that you would love to be a part of?
Well, as somebody pointed out here, you see Eddie Brock Venom hanging out in the background. I mean, I never really thought about being a writer until, I met a lot of other creators, like I said, on message boards, and kind of said, well, I might be able to do this. I used to write like comedy things with some buddies, and I had some experience with it, and you can probably tell in my books that that's the way I kind of lean. But I never really had the passion like to be a creator when I was younger. But I mean, the one I would say I thought about the most would be Spider-Man. Everybody would love to have a crack at that. But honestly, I'm going to sound like I feel like I'm, 80 years old and on death's door or something. But, in my autumn years now, I don't really think about that too much. I probably won't get the opportunity to have that. I would love to write of a current series. I would love to write for Black Hammer. But I don't think he's ever going to farm that out, no matter how, how good my writing was. But, those would be the two that kind of jump to mind.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. Well, Lemire just might get sick of this whole writing gig and just kind of pull a Kirkman and just say like, okay, here's my concepts. Everybody else write it.
He could. He definitely could.
No, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's one of the things with, putting out your own book and getting the chance to write. And again, you've been writing for a while, so this isn't something that's brand new, but, did you ever think maybe when you had started reading comics that this would be something that you would be, actually taking part in producing your own books? Like when you were a kid, were you like, making your own like comics, putting together your own comics just for fun or your friends or something?
My brother used to buy books, and he was kind of the artist, and he would make these amazing stories in his books and his own characters. Like he would do the same thing with like Legos, these elaborate. And to be honest with you, I was kind of always just along for the ride. I was like, okay, what are your cool stories? I never really thought of myself that way. Honestly, that's the same reason I started playing drums. We were in a band. We had 2 bass players. We needed a drummer. My brother had a drum set. I played drums. When I played baseball with my brother when he was a kid, he wanted to be a pitcher. He needed someone to catch. That was just me. And honestly, I still feel like that. I don't ever wake up and go, I'm going to be the next Neil Gaiman. I don't know if that's low self-esteem or whatever, but I don't really see myself as a writer. I like to create. I like to have an object with my friends, like I said, music, or I used to make videos or, things like that. I like to jam with my friends, so to speak, and have something. And so that's always kind of what I've done. I enjoy getting feedback, from characters I create or dialogue I write or whatever. I do really enjoy that, but yeah, I never really had like that desire as a kid to be a creative and to see, my name in the big lights. Of course, I went through the phase where I wanted to be, a rock star or whatever, but, I've always just felt like I'm the guy in the background who's kind of just driving what needs to be done. And, I even argue with some of my collaborators when I want to put their name first, and they're like, no, writer usually goes first. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of the driving force. I'm just here to, make sure it's kind of cohesive and gets completed. I never really feel like I'm the star of the show or anything like that.
And it's the quiet ones you have to watch out for, though. You may be in the background, but maybe you've got a lot more going on than you think and give yourself credit for.
Probably not.
That's awesome.
I think it's the loud ones like Billy you got to watch out.
Well, yeah. Of course, he has himself on mute, so he can't take himself off mute fast enough.
I caught him.
I couldn't zing.
No response. No response.
I'm going to answer one of John's questions, though, because I am confident he's the one person I know that could, in this world, that could probably write a 4-issue Max Rebo series from Star Wars. You don't see it there, but where is the Max Rebos? Are they? Yeah, there we go.
Wow.
We got a lot of Max Rebos hanging out back there.
Okay, so I think this can bridge into a question about music. So, as you said, you were a drummer. What kind of music informed you when you were learning how to play? Because we're not locked to comic books, and this is something I love to know.
I mean, judging by the massive wall that's about to fall on you at any second behind you, I would think
Yeah.
you're a little bit into music.
Tiny
Although
bit.
some of those are DVDs, right?
No, these are all
CDs.
CDs. These are all CDs. Yeah.
And for those of you who are younger, CDs.
The way around. They go all the way
I'll
around.
talk to you about what this compact
Yeah,
is.
it's kind of scary. Yeah.
We used to hold music in our hands. I know somebody recently who started reprinting cassettes, and I was like, "What are you doing?" We're going way back. Anyway, I'm definitely a metalhead. I definitely fell in love with metal at a young age. You know, I was really into like death metal, like Cannibal Corpse and Deicide and stuff like that, Morbid Angel. But it was really like bands like Clutch and Primus. They're more alternative, but you know, some people would say, but you know, to me, it's hard rock, metal, all that stuff. Those are really the things that really caught me at, 13, 14, 15 years old. And that's really what I played and what I wanted to play. And the bands I were in were probably would be considered more alternative, new metal-ish, but definitely heavy metal. Heavy double bass pedals, loud cymbals. I played more aggressively than finesse. I was never going to be Neil Peart, but I was going to make a lot of noise while I was out there.
Now, I can also appreciate that because I've been in bands as a singer, and as some fellow bandmates used to say, I wear the guitar, and like I was never in a group that was like really aligned with my listening. It was always like elements of stuff that I was comfortable with, but I was never right in that pocket of something that I really wanted to do. And
I didn't know that because I've heard some of your rock vocals. I would have thought, but you have such a diverse taste. I don't know if any band, unless they were like insanely unique or eclectic, would really fit because you just really like everything. I know a lot of people say that, but you really do fit that bill.
But there is some, and I have to say that there's no better feeling in the world than having music behind you live. I mean, this is no better feeling in the world. I wish everybody could experience that.
Absolutely. Yes. We talked about the series I helped edit, Anthology, was kind of me trying to put that in paper as much as I could transfer it to comics. I love comics like that. Yeah. Scott Pilgrim and Doom Boy and Moonhead and the Music Machine, these comics that somehow capture sound. Yeah. I just love that. And I've been trying to do that. I have a project I'm trying to work on with somebody now that is really a love letter to music and heavy metal, really. But it is the best experience, the best human experience you can have is seeing live music or being a part of live music. Is just so unique, and it's my favorite thing too. But by the same token, being in a band is stupid. Because bands I would agree stupid. With.
Well, actually, so you brought up a good point. Do you think, and this is kind of a two-parter, do you think that metal specifically, like heavy metal or any type of the metal genre, works really well in inspiring comics? And the second part is, if that's the case, why did DC's death metal suck so much?
Well, as Bill will probably tell you, I give him a hard time because I don't read much DC. I defer to people like him to tell me if it's any good or not. So I couldn't tell you in that regard. Some people just don't get it. They try to force it. You look at somebody like Daniel Warren Johnson, who understands metal and can because he is a Renaissance man. He can just transfer that from his brain through his hand to the pen in ways that other people just don't get. It's just hard if you don't have the talent and be able to translate it in expression in comics. It's very hard, but some people can really do it.
Yeah. Well, I just pictured Daniel Warren Johnson, like all of his like what he writes and his art just kind of flows out of a mullet somehow. Like the mullet is holding the pen. I don't know what his
comic was Space Mullet. I mean, he was.
There you go.
But as far as metal, I mean, metal is just. It's over the top, right? It's the most extreme version of music, and the lyrics are, wild and crazy usually, flamboyant. There's so many versions of metal, within subgenres. I think it represents as comic books would too, because that's, there are, low key comics like I like Essex County and stuff like that. That's a little more, but it just metal is just so extreme and over the top, and easy to translate, or to correlate them together.
Yeah, and I do want to couch the Dark Knight's death metal. I didn't think the entire thing was terrible. I actually really enjoyed. I read the entire thing. I really enjoyed a lot of it. But I think they, like you said, they forced it a little too much. They tried to take the, take the setting, take the concept, take the emotional inspiration of metal and pigeonholed it in a way. Yeah. I don't think they understood. They didn't really understand how to get the essence of something bombastic and flamboyant and wild and varied, and how to translate that to the page very well. So
yeah, and again, I'm no expert on that, but it does sound like that's what a lot of people are saying. It feels like a bunch of people sitting around a boardroom table saying, death metal, that sounds cool, let's do that. It doesn't always translate across a whole line of books.
Yeah, I think
I heard a Voivod record once. Let's put that on the page.
I think with what the end result was, with it getting better at the end, I would just compare it to like a Venom album that has 2 good songs on it, and the rest is the garbage after 86.
Sometimes that happens, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting you were talking about that with who's the Wonder Woman Dead Earth creator you were talking about? I can't. Daniel
Warren Johnson.
Yeah, I always got that vibe from J.H. Williams, and I think some of that was because he spent a substantial part of his career as a skateboard designer, skateboard graphic designer. That it seemed that I wouldn't necessarily call directly correlate his style to something like skatecore, but you could tell that there was a direct link from what he was doing there to a lot of his work, particularly Sandman Overture. The Sandman Overture is a very musical storyline.
Cool. Yeah,
there's some psychedelia there that kind of flows in with the way that he creates, sort of, especially if you look at the Sandman Overture, there's a lot there where it's just texture.
Yeah.
So much texture that's being produced there. And it could be, it could be a heavy soundscape or
in alignment with an instrumental.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
We do have a question. And again, I wish I could share this on the screen. This is just a general question, not necessarily, again, having to do with music and whatnot. It's from the Twitch channel. Mudflat Boy, I have a question. How do you each feel about nudity in comic books? For instance, well-known characters like Batman and Batman Damned #1, where his penis was seen. And I remember a couple of years ago when this did come out, we did talk about it on the show. And I mean, it's nudity in general. I mean, it's kind of has a long-standing relationship with comics. Pre-code, I guess you didn't really see too much, but especially the 60s and 70s with the comics genre, nudity was used a lot. In mainstream comics, though, like in DC and Marvel, obviously the code just kind of put a stop to a lot of that for a long time. But it's interesting, and I think we talked about DC Black Label being able to kind of push that a little bit, but that was pre the new management over at DC, and I don't think we're going to be seeing much of that.
I missed the bat penis. I'm sorry. If someone wants to catch me up on it or throw up a picture, I guess I can Google it. But that's dangerous.
It was Brian Bermejo was the artist.
Lee Bermejo and Brian Azzarello. Yeah.
Lieber.
And it wasn't. I mean, it was 2 panels, right?
Yeah, 2 panels.
It was the peen and the tush
changing. Yeah,
and I think that just goes.
I'm sorry, it wasn't enough for you, Bill.
Yeah, well, I got other resources. It just seems to me that, like any other erotic material, that there's ones that are well done, and then there's the ones that are just trying to satisfy a prurient interest, and those are icky.
Like I remember. I mean, it wasn't. I don't know how much nudity was shown, but I remember like the excitement over Batman and Catwoman having sex, and just sex in comics, nudity. I think it's fine. Some people do it great. I mean, Viola Manara is made a whole career of drawing, sexy women. There's many people like that. I'm probably the wrong person to ask to your commenter, because I am an extreme prude. When it comes, I'm just being honest. Like I have difficulty going there. I think sex scenes are often just fluff, like kind of what Bill was saying. They're just there, especially when it's like a major character, like, oh, you can see him naked. If it has a reason,
they're just checking a box.
Yeah,
you can
I
tell.
much prefer when it's part of the story. Like
Mhm.
the one that comes to mind is my favorite comic of all time or run is Sleeper by Phillips and Brubaker.
Mhm.
And there's an amazing sex scene in there that it's about their powers and how they come together and meld, and they can make love together because their powers play off of what each other like sexually and doesn't hurt the other person when it happens. So there was some depth there that it added to the story. It wasn't just like, even though, Brubaker does do that sometimes. He has very, titillating comics and they're kind of that pulpy, sexy style. But at least that story always comes to mind when people talk about this, is that served the story. But yeah. I mean, when we did Earth 2 podcast, we covered straight porn comics where they were just, 2 panels of intro and then they, had, gratuitous sex. That's fine too. It's all fine. Comics are there for these kind of things. They're often, one of the best mediums for telling diverse, stories that you may not get, other places.
And I think the indie publishers and indie comic scene, I think there's a lot more of a willingness to do that. And again, yes, you do get sort of like the titillation for titillation's sake kind of comics where it's like, how many boobies can I put on a page? But occasionally you get something that is essentially softcore porn, but also tells an amazing story. And comes to mind is Faithless. Which is I believe that's also Azzarello, and the artist is Maria Lovett, and I mean that it's a beautiful book.
We might be talking about her a little later.
Yeah, Maria Lovett, who as an excellent artist, I mean she's a beautiful artist, but she also has a great way of making realistic bodies. Naked having sex, like she can depict that very well in a way where. Yes, there's a lot of eroticism to it, but it also is, very tastefully done for some of the more extreme sex scenes in Faithless, but really cool. James actually has a bit to say about this, also referring to DC. Do you guys remember there was also a ruckus over a penis on a Lobo cover in the early 90s? Simon Bisley got a lot of crap for that. I do not remember that.
I don't remember that. And if there's something from the 90s that's DC that I won't remember, it's Lobo.
Wow, Lobo, you hate.
Yeah, Lobo's kind of like, if I said on the show before, like I'm not the biggest Batman fan, but if Batman's here, Lobo's like in the neighbors at the neighbors.
I see it.
Yeah. I've only read Lobo because Sam Keith did some Lobo, so I might know the most about Lobo of all the characters. But yeah, I mean, apparently being a Marvel zombie was detrimental to my penis lifestyle because I couldn't. I guess I went for the wrong company.
Yeah, but it's also interesting because Marvel was the first to go there with the 70s black and white books.
Oh, I didn't know.
It wasn't uncommon to see the Daughters of the Dragon. There's a very pretty famous Daughters of the Dragon story where both Misty and Colleen are naked and they're being injected with heroin. It's very French Connection Part 2. So they kind of went there, and when there was actually like a bit of an uproar when they did do the reprints for Tomb of Dracula stories and Tales of the Zombie, that the nudity wasn't included. So yeah, but out of the two,
I wish I could share the picture, but James, I did find the cover. It was the cover to Lobo's Back, issue number 2 in 1992 by Keith Geffen, Alan Grant, and Simon Bisley. And the cover art is there is a penis that's not very cleverly hidden directly in Lobo's elbow. It is.
Was it Bisley who did the cover?
Yes, I believe so. Yep, it was.
Because it's funny because
92.
I think I actually have some of the run because Sam Keith did some of the covers, but I think that's the one he didn't do. So that's funny. I wonder if he would have snuck it in too.
So since you're mentioning Sam Keith, did you dig the Max?
Did I?
There we go.
Yeah.
Have we never talked about that?
No. That might be news to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a catalyst for my life. I love the Max. I love Sam Keith. I mean, you see my Max Rebo, but this direction we have Sam Keith.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Over there. Sorry.
See that color scheme.
See, I'm just doing this so I can get the whole room. That's all.
I worship the Max. I'm not going to tell you it's the highest, Alan Moore level of writing, but it just caught me at the right time. It's very much an influence on what I like, what I write. It was just so bizarre and so different, and just this superhero who he's just not really even a superhero. He just happens to be wearing tights, and I worship that comic.
Also, when I was an actor, briefly, I did audition for the MTV show.
Oh, wow.
And my friend Pat also went with me, and he got a call back. I didn't.
Did he make it?
No. But, at the time, there was so few shows that, at the time, like almost all the voiceover work was either in Los Angeles or in Dallas. Dallas was a huge hub for anime. And there was so few that actually recorded in New York. And when we saw there was one in New York and that it was non-union, oh boy, we were there.
Wow.
Yeah.
There we go. Here we go. Hey.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
No, and again, I'm not going to tell you it's the highest version of writing. I know it has its flaws, but it's my favorite.
But it's also comes from pure heart, So,
yeah,
and I think
if you read anything about the creator, there's a lot of himself in there, and that just, as a kid, that just wowed me. Like, he's just putting himself in this book. Just he is this universe. He is just a very unique and interesting person.
Okay, cool. All right, Bryan. So I guess you're done with your discussions with the Secretary of the Navy.
Yeah. No, we're good.
Okay.
Biden's all taken care of. We're fine.
Okay, cool.
You didn't miss anything.
Oh, I didn't miss it. I heard most
Talk
of
about
it.
penis.
I heard about earpiece. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, and I'm sorry people didn't get their stuff up here. But look what I just found.
The bad penis.
Yes, there it is.
The Lobo penis.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to see. If you're looking for it, it's there. But this was definitely the main cover, and this is back before digital comics. So of course, DC couldn't just blur it out a little bit on the digital cover on Comixology. This is what went out to the
even noticed that.
Yeah. And again, it's not 100% clear, but what he was trying to do with that.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
we're beating the dead horse at this point with this. So
just keep eating it until it's
wait now. Waka waka.
So Bryan, do you have any questions for Jon?
Well, so I did miss part of this, so if I apologize if I ask a stupid question again, but I really was interested in this. This now that I know Constantine, it makes a lot more sense. Okay? So I was surprised, and maybe you can talk to sort of the intent here. I started with this kind of blank slate. I had no idea what to expect, and I see the kid, and the kid's possessed, and I'm like, okay, that's interested so far. Then it just goes blue almost immediately in the everything. I was taken by surprise, and I don't hate it at all, but I think it was sort of I don't know. It felt very just oh, we're going there. All right, cool. And then she's having sexy times with these priest cops. And how did you how did you put all that together into the mix? How did you land on? I mean, Constantine, I get, but how did you get all that other those elements in this stew? Because it is a unique flavor, to say the least, that I really enjoy, but it surprised me.
Can I just interject there? Sexy Time with Priest Cops. I think that's a new band name.
I mean, I love play drums.
That. Yeah, there you go. We got a drummer.
Yeah, I think this it is the. I enjoy talking about it. I'm glad I'm able to come on and do interviews like this because it really is a true collaboration. Bob actually came up with the police force side of it. He's like, well, they wear the priest garb, and again, it's supposed to be more realistic. like if this really happened in the real world, what would the government's response be to it? And of course, they would create this horribly run, bureaucratic, overly militarized, and yeah, even before the events of the last year, we wrote this. But yeah, that was really his idea. He was just like, you know what, I want to draw this. This is characters, and then we kind of came up with it together. So really, Connie, the social worker part, that she was going to be a caseworker for these kids, and then Bob kind of said, well, who does she work with? Well, you know, these are the people that come in and help her with the extreme cases and clean up the cases and all that. And they're kind of the possession cops. And, you know, it was really a collaboration.
Oops, sorry. I'm trying to put up a specific panel that I also really enjoyed, and I realize now what I did. It's like at the end of the first little section where she's having the initial case, and you got just one panel, and I got to know if this was Bobgar's. Like, was this like his idea or yours to have like the sexy devil bartender or waiter in the bar she's at? Like, I feel like there's more to the story with this scene here. It's a very quick beat. You blink and you miss it, but oh my god, I want to go there. I want to tip the strippers. I want to see the drag show. I want to do the whole thing. Okay, again, you know, if I can get people to back this comic, we can make, you know, just about anything happen. I mean, I definitely don't look like that character, but, you know, I can make it happen. You know, again, this comic, it started off right there was the end of the first short. So, again, this is not something, I'm not going to put a disclaimer on the book. I mean, people, you know, I want them to read and enjoy it, but it was written at different reasons, at different pace, and then kind of grew from there. So again, the first two parts there, like where you see his signature at the end there, was kind of the end of the first story, the first seed we planted. So we had a lot to fit in. We couldn't really expand on that, but if I'll be honest, I would never, you know, blast them out there. But most of the stuff I try to give credit to each of us, but that was definitely Bob. I don't remember putting sexy bartender in the script. I could be wrong, but and I, you know, would cop to it, but. You know, I just wanted her to look alone in the bar, drinking alone. And, you know, Bob always adds awesome little background things and things. I totally want to go there and hang out and kiki with her, because I feel like she not only looks like quite a trip and quite a fun, you know, person to drink with, but that again, that sexy devil bartender, waiter is just, yeah. Kudos to Bobgar. No, so yeah, I really enjoyed it. I missed some of this. I apologize, but I'm excited. I'm so glad you're funded. I know with Kickstarter is, like you said earlier, it's such you're putting it out there, right? You're taking such a risk in some ways, you know, and you just don't know. And I'm so thrilled that you still have like 17 days, I think, left, right? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much time. Stretch goals, and that's a very exciting feeling. This is the highest we've ever raised for a Kickstarter in the 10 or 12 years. We've done multiple projects. It's not quite the most backers. Bulletproof Chicken was the most. That was such an easy concept to sell, especially to, you know, a Kickstarter audience. I think that was just such an easily digestible pitch. But yeah, we're getting up there in backers. We're funded more. It's just it is a good feeling. You know, in the end, if we didn't get funding, you know what? We'd go on. We'd find a way to still produce our comics. But it's just, it really is a good feeling to have people support it and have people be excited. You know, even I didn't expect, you know, anyone ever to talk to us about the sexy bartender panel, but it's just, that's fun for me too as a creator to talk about how the sausage gets made, so to speak.
Yeah,
I see what you did there. Nice.
Purely intentional. Purely intentional.
Okay, well, I guess we can start our last lap here with the interview. So I got the baton back. So one of my favorite parts of this story, and I apologize for not asking you about it earlier, was where we see where Connie first manifested her powers, and that really cool priest. And you know, it was this situation with the children. It was one of those things where, and I don't want to spoil, but it was one of those feelings like, okay, I shouldn't be laughing, but you know, I was dying just because, just the way things progressed there. Do you have a lot more early Connie stories, do you think, whether they are in flashback or, something that may effectively stand on its own?
Yeah, I think we do together. And again, I want to give credit to my co-collaborator. He kind of threw out a 2-sentence pitch. This is the next story we're going to do together with Connie. Let's talk about, why maybe her career hasn't gone how she wanted. And, she started off with a mentor, and, this is, what happened. So yeah, without spoiling too much, again, that was a great seed planted by Bobgar, and I felt like we were able to tell a good part of her story in that short there.
And it was also great because it was augmentation. It wasn't disruptive at all. It was perfectly placed in terms of where we should get backstory information like that. It was really well done. Love that part.
Yeah, and if he wasn't such a hermit, he should really be on these interviews talking about it. He's really, again, it is a true collaboration. I think oftentimes we go, the writer, writes it and tells him what to draw. But I enjoy the story. Same with, like Hellbillies. Before I said, Bryan added so much to that story. And, you could pay anyone to draw a comic, but it's so exciting to sit down and look at the final product and realize no one else besides Bob and I. And now, we're bringing in an awesome colorist, Winston Gambro, for the new stories as well. Only we could jam together to make this, and that's like a really cool thing.
All right. Handing that baton over to Steve. Steve, what else do you have for Jon?
Well, I mean, just real quick, I like that. I like how you called it a jam, and you referred to it earlier as like a different type of jam session. Going back to the idea of music and comics kind of intersecting. Do you can you tell when you're looking at another comic project, whether it's another independent artist or writer's work, or even one of the bigger comics? Can you tell where maybe music had some influence, and how the story came together, or how the book came together, kind of like how you operate with with other collaborators? Do you have a way of like seeing that or feeling that when you're reading a book that just really speaks to you?
I think there's certain authors, like if you look at, or even artists, I guess, come to mind, but authors too. You look at something like Unwritten. Just looks like it's this beautiful ballad of a story, and just the way the writer and artist work together. When you can almost hear sound on the page. What they make, or you look at an artist like Becky Cloonan, who just just drips heavy metal. She just, and I can't say if I know that from her personality, on social media, but I could even say that in just first seeing her work. She loves drawing wolves and witches and these beautiful frost scenes and big swords. And, certain creators like that, you just feel their musical influences.
Her favorite car, the car that she wanted when she was in high school, was a giant 1980s panel van.
Oh,
with something painted on the side.
Perfect sense. I hope she's got one.
Well, that's all I have. Bryan, did you want to ask? Did you have another question in you? Because I know you missed a lot of the discussion that we had, but
I want to know more about Jon's music, because like Bill, I am not only a fan of certain bands very deeply, but I've been in some bands, right? So I want to hear Jon, have you been in a band and you have any good gig stories? I feel like you've probably got at least one really good gig story.
I just like in comics, I'm not really a historian. I love to hear people like Bill talking, and they just, Jack Davis inked this guy in 1950, so it looks different. Like these people who just have that wealth of knowledge. I'm the same way with music. I had, a very brief and timid career. We played a couple of big shows. I was in a band called Anti-Hero, was my last band, and we played for 5 or 6 years. We had some decent gigs. We played with Misery Signals. But I don't really have any great gig stories, unfortunately. I never did like a real tour or anything like that. But I enjoyed every second of it. But yeah, I love hearing other people's stories. I just love hearing, people about, gigging on the road or how they wrote music. I guess if I got together with some of my buddies, they might drill up some memories of shows I've forgotten, because, I would drink before the show to calm my anxiety and probably don't remember.
Of course. No, of course. Yeah.
You can probably see the red. I even have my favorite feature on the drum is a cup holder, a beer bottle holder.
That is the
symbol stand there. So
one of the wisest investments I ever made when I started playing these Buffett gigs was that little beer thing you just looped onto a mic stand.
Yeah,
like saved my life. I mean, not really. Probably risked my life. Whatever. But no, man. I totally appreciate the common. The alcohol really does give you a little confidence that you may sometimes want when you get up on stage for a bunch of randos, to hear you play. And being the drummer, man, I used to stand right in front of my drummer, and who actually it's kind of sad, like he just passed away recently for one of the bands I was in. And man, it's just having a good drummer is so important. And being able to like lock into that rhythm. So man, I appreciate you giving that for your bands and being that I
could definitely send you some of my music. I do appreciate that. Yeah, I probably wasn't the most talented in the band, but I tried.
I'm sure you.
Yeah, I was never going to be Neil Peart, but I was going to get up there and make a lot of noise. And
man, who can be Neil Peart, right? Neil Peart isn't always Neil Peart either. So like, what are you going to do?
Are we on the anniversary of his death, or was that yesterday? Maybe.
No, yesterday was the day the music died.
Yeah, yesterday was Buddy Holly. I also have to say, in terms of music, John is the only other person I've ever encountered, apart from one other person, that knew of the band Tub Ring. And if you want to talk about a band that you really can't describe what they're like, to me, that's like one I usually cite. And I swear, I'm telling you, John, I really did see them in a church like 4 miles from here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Were they playing or were they praying? Like, get us.
You're so funny, Steve. I'm dying.
As you have said, I am funny joke man. So.
You are funny joke man. Huh? All right. Well, I guess we can move on to talking about some current comics. And John, please, if you would, stay on the line here and join us. You cool with that?
I brought something to the table. I'm hoping.
All right. All right. Well, I think we probably should be gracious and start off with our guest first. So, John, tell us about that thing that you're reading that you're digging.
Well, part of what made me want to create comics is finding unique and different comics, especially, in the last 10 or 15 years of my reading. I really do feel like if people go more than a short amount of time not enjoying reading, they're not really trying very hard, because I really do think this is the golden age of comics. Every week, amazing, not even just good, like amazing works come out. This one may not fit the category for you. It does for me. I'm sad to say I haven't. I didn't find it till it was pretty much completely wrapped up and on Kickstarter, and that's Rafer Roberts. I'm glad you guys are doing a visual show because I think you need to see this one. Nightmare of the Rat. Again, if you're on the audio, yes, my man,
on the top of my pile right there.
I mean, it's literally, again, if you're in the audio version, you can't see, but go look this up. Nightmare of the Rat. Look up Rafer Roberts Store Envy. You can get it. It's like $5. It's literally a giant ass newspaper of these amazing strips about. He saw this creepy doll in some kids show. It was. A knockoff Mickey Mouse, and it just horrified him and stayed in his mind. So he wrote, this. I mean, just look at it. It's disturbing. It's funny. It's very much. It's the stories are a little bit longer, but it's definitely an homage to newspaper strips. His version of that, and it's just the total package. These are the things you look for. This is just a passion project he's been doing for 10 years. It totally delivers. You probably won't find it on shelves because it can't really stand up on a shelf because it's just this weird. It's a pain in the ass to store, but I'm so glad that it exists. And these are the kind of comics that just get me jazzed. When you find something like this, you know that no matter what happens, comics are going to be okay because people are going to continue to put out these weird, bizarre, amazingly cartoon books. So read Nightmare of the Rat by Rafer Roberts.
Love Rafer. Yay, Rafer Roberts.
He's been on the show before, and we've championed, whether it's been the very commercial stuff like Archer and Armstrong, or some of the more esoteric stuff like that mini comic he did of Thanos and Darkseid and bringing their daughters to school.
Well,
and
then in
carpool.
traffic and
Yeah.
the carpool.
Yeah.
Man, I'm sorry.
It's great.
I must have missed your episode too. Now I feel bad again. I'm getting into his career. I saw him, working with Mike Norton
right
recently, and then I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, this guy's been producing comics forever. And I
Yeah.
saw the Kickstarter and was like, that's sometimes comics. So people will be having a career for 10, 15 years before you find them, and then you can go back and just wallow over all their awesome work.
Yeah,
there's he did a series of comics for years called Plastic Farm,
Yes.
that you can get in this collected.
Now, right?
Yeah.
I think they're all out. You can get them. I always pick up a volume or try to pick up a volume when I see them at a convention. Obviously, last year it didn't happen, but it's very much long form. This is a life's work kind of thing, and I don't know if he's doing them anymore. It's been probably a while, but there are several volumes.
He actually part of it. I believe it's that. Oh gosh, I forget the name of the anthology. But again, love a story like that. Like he's just putting it out on his time where he finds it, and now he has like the final story is going in this anthology. But he's like, this is the end of Plastic Farm. I'm wrapping up all these long form stories that I've been doing, so I can go on to new things. I just happened to recently hear him say that on Twitter. So yeah, it is about to wrap up. So hopefully there'll be one final collection, or I can pick that up.
Yeah, that's pretty. It's pretty cool. I loved his work with Valiant. He worked on the Archer and Armstrong book a couple years ago, and then also the
Harbinger Renegades.
Yeah, the Harbinger Renegades, which was great. There's been some great stuff that he's working on. Obviously, Grumble. Gotta love Grumble. With Mike Norton, I think that was a lot of fun. But yeah, no, good suggestion.
All right, Steve, you kind of have the mic anyway, so why don't you tell us about something you're reading that you're digging?
Well, I had a couple things here, but I think I'm just going to talk about one series, and that is American Ronin, which is put out by AWA, which exploded into the comic scene right at the beginning of the pandemic, and had to suffer through that. But honestly, I don't think they suffered that much because they've been putting out some amazing stuff in the past year, and they've only been out for really a year. They've had multiple miniseries out. They've started a new superhero universe, but this I don't think is necessarily part of the superhero universe. It's one of their other independent books. With it's a very specific series. An American Ronin. It is written by Peter Milligan, with art by Akko, with inks by David Lorenzo and Dean White on colors. Honestly,
I haven't heard Akko's name in a long time.
I know, which is too bad. I loved him when I think he was the main collaborator for art on the Apollo, and my brain has forgotten the name of the character. The Wildstorm version of Batman. Midnighter on the Midnighter book from several years ago. He was he did the art with that. But this is just gorgeous. All the covers are very basic, very bright colors, static sort of image. But the art is very dynamic. He plays a lot with panel layouts. A lot of sort of like scattershot ways of putting together a page, and it's absolutely gorgeous art. But the story itself, and Peter Milligan's kind of set this up and thrown you in the middle of this world that's more or less dominated by several large corporations, mega multinational corporations that we're not really sure exactly what they do. I don't think he needs to explain what they do, but they more or less are at each other's throats and more than corporate espionage, actually assassinating each other's leaders and main liaisons. And through that, they're using very specifically specialized assassins. And one of them has broken free and is taking his revenge out on one of the major corporations. And that's the main character, the American Ronin of the book, who actually does have a bit of a superpower. He can take DNA from someone and essentially assume their feelings, their memories, their identity of self. He doesn't become the person, but he feels as he becomes that person, and therefore it's easier for him to track them, find out where they're going to go, know how to hurt them the most, and take them out. And he is, of course, being hunted by somebody with a similar power, but with the power of nightmares. He can see into somebody's nightmares by sampling their DNA and use that fear to twist and destroy them. And in issue number 4, which it's a 5-part series, it kind of is the first part of the climax where they do confront each other in person. And it's just an exciting book. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of action, a lot of really cool setup, and very. I mean, there's a little bit of a bit of a heist in there where things are set up early on and they pay off a little bit, a couple issues later. But I really recommend it. It's such an exciting book to read. The collection should be coming out, I believe, in about 2 or 3 months. So if you missed the floppies, you should be able to pick it up in a single volume. So I recommend American Ronin, put out by AWA as part of their Upshot line.
I like that. That sounds cool. I'm gonna write it down.
Yeah.
All right, let's go over to Bryan. I understand you kind of rated Comixology and read a few things.
Man, I was like pounding my homework at the last possible minute. It was glorious. The best way to read comics is in 5 minutes under duress because you have to meet a deadline. It's the best, right? I really recommend it. But actually, what's funny is, so this week, or it may have been last week, I'm not great at this because I do Comixology, and I just every so often remember to go on. 2 books from Tom King came out. One of my favorite current DC writers. His new issue, issue 3 of Rorschach, came out, and I think it's issue 8, I believe, of Strange Adventures. I gotta double check that.
I can say for certain it was issue 8 because I forgot to order it and had to go to a store to buy one, and I had to go to 3 stores to find a copy. So it's definitely issue 8.
So did you read it though?
No.
Oh,
not yet.
You didn't find a copy.
I did find a copy.
You did. Okay.
I just haven't. It's over there.
So
show you
that way.
I love Tom King, and I really do dig everything he's done pretty much across the board, even back to Omega Men. Great work, the whole thing. But this is an interesting case study in where there is the Tom King who fairly straightforward, but still really good storytelling. Again, it's a collaboration, right? Comics isn't just the writer. So for Rorschach, he's working with Jorge Fornes. I can never say his name right. I'm so terrible. And then Strange Adventures, it's
Mitch Gerard and Doc Shaner.
Thank you. Beautiful. So all of which amazing storytellers, like the top of their game, right? Great people. But Rorschach was just so delightful, such an interesting deep dive into sort of what the Watchmen world is, but dealing with aspects of the text, but not necessarily stomping all over the text. It really walked the fine line. And the storytelling was very clean and straightforward and really enjoyable. Strange Adventures, on the other hand, I think the issue 8 is the most confusing thing I've ever read. And I've read Morrison.
Wow.
In fact, during the same pounding comics, I was reading the Green Lantern stuff that the series I thought it ended and it didn't. And that was also there's an issue that I want to talk about when everyone's read it here that is so incredibly complicated and hard to read, but at least I kind of narratively get what he's doing. It's just gimmicky and hard. It's intentionally hard to read, but that's not to talk about now. But issue 8 of Strange Adventures, and maybe it's because I haven't read issue 7 in over a month, So I really feel like it's an issue. It's a thing you have to read in one sitting. But oh my God, it's just too much for my brain. Like, I don't even know that it's just smart. I think it's smart, but I think it's not good storytelling choices in the way it's laid out and the way it's paced, and then the way I don't know, it's just too dense. It's too much. I did enjoy some of it, like some of the themes about, going to war and, what that's like when you have a family, and like all of that's great. But I think of the two, the Rorschach that digs into issue 3 to this idea that there have been people who were Rorschach since the original. And there's a strongman character we're introduced to who also hooked up with the cowboy or cowgirl rather, who was in the previous issues. Like that's an interesting story. It's kind of interesting to see the parallels of their relationship and then what she had with the comic book illustrator who was also Rorschach, right? Like, and it touches on some of the QAnoniness, the QAnanity that is our current culture bizarreness. So I really dug Rorschach 3. I think Jorge Fornes is just a powerhouse, and his art is so perfect. It's like a perfect marriage of their techniques. And normally Mitch Garrett and Doc Shaner, I mean, they're just so great together. So I don't even know that it's their issue, but just there's like a formalism problem maybe that I'm hung up on, and just Strange Adventures, which I still love the whole series overall. It's interesting. I feel like I'm going to have to like get through the rest of the issues and then go back and sort of like peel the onion and sort of dig through and get it all in one go. Or I'm not going to track like what he's doing, Yeah.
Is it like this kind of situation where you're watching a TV series that may have already been canceled and they air the episodes out of order? So they may not be something where it's a complete story from start to finish, but they chunk in an episode just to kind of schedule it in this, just put it somewhere in the schedule. And it's after something else major had happened, but you're seeing it before that major thing happened. So it just kind of feels
it's worse than that. It's worse than that. Do you remember like a clip show? The concept of a clip show, right? Well, take a concept of like that where it's a clip show, but take the clips from all across the season in not random, but in weird orders that are meant to sort of contrast thematically, but not
including episodes you haven't seen yet.
Exactly. No, exactly. And then with unreliable narrator thrown in there for good effect, which I always love, but in this case, it's like that stew or that thing you're making that's cooking, like you're cooking, and it's just got one too many flavors, and it's just something is just you've overbaked it, anyway. And I don't want to bag on Tom King because honest to God, I do think he's one of the best storytellers in comics right now. However, I will call it when I see it, and I think Strange Adventures number 8 to me is up there with just one of the most just like confusing, hard to read. Now, I will go back when I have more time because obviously I think there are comics that you need to sit there and really pour over and all that. But it's comics too. It's like that's fine, but it should be
somewhat clear. It's okay to take risks and do different things. But yeah, if you're intentionally confusing or you go too far, it does kind of take you out of it and can ruin the narrative. You do have to kind of do some duty to keep the reader knowing what the hell's going on. But I always look forward to people talking about these things because I look forward to hearing about a lot of these things like DC Metal and stuff after the fact. They're not really something I clamor for in the moment. I don't keep up with current comics as much as I used to, so I appreciate. And then when people tell me whose opinions I respect, then I'll go back and say, okay, this sounds like it's for me. So that sounds like one I'd like to hear how it actually wraps up and then decide if I'm going to dip into it.
Yeah, and I also think when it is a mini series that there is an obligation to, if you do take risks, to at least continue with a sense of propulsion when you do have a limited space of storytelling. And I'm trying to think, there was an example where the book was like 5 issues and it spent like an issue and a half on tangential shit. I can't remember what it is, but it seems to me that the writer should have an obligation that, I'm okay with taking risks, but when you do have a limited number of issues, make sure that the ground that you intended to cover gets covered.
Yeah.
And
that's like,
sometimes,
I mentioned
stories
that.
like that goes, kind of takes it off the track.
And again, I'm no seasoned writer, even after 10 years of doing it. But yeah, the difference between a short miniseries, long running series is way different. You have to kind of know. And you're right. If you waste pages in a 5-issue series, again, that you gotta hit more often than not. Otherwise, you lose the reader.
Yeah.
Lose the story thread.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess it's down to me. All right. I'll talk about a book that I was influenced last night. I watched John Runyon's podcast, the Comic Book Page Comic Book Look podcast. I'm very sorry. Comic Book Page was another one with someone I don't like. But
we've just started a beef, that. Now we're going to have to rumble. Comic Book Page.
I'm very sorry. Yeah, I can do that in the audio, but videos forever.
Starting beefs with other podcasts.
Book that I don't even know if they're still going. I'll have to take a look. Yeah. Anyway, the book that I want to talk about is Luna #1. And this is written and drawn by Maria Lovett. This is actually not Maria Lovett's work. This is a variant cover by Jenny Frison. And certainly it was just out of the covers. It was I thought, more mind blowing. And the intention of this particular series, I think, is to mind blow. I am not familiar at all with Maria Lovett's work. I did not read the Faithless books. I know she had a book herself called Heartbeat. That came out after that. She wrote and drew. She is writing and drawing this particular series. And Luna tells a story of Teresa. And Luna is part of the conjunctions in her last name. And she finds herself in the very late 60s, which is, I'm going to assume, is 1969, in the desert with her car broken down. And she runs into a group of hippies. And the hippies are let me get the name right. I had it on my tongue. Yes, the Family of the Sun, with one male in charge, Lux, and the remainder that are female. And of course, the first thing you get to when you hear that is Manson family. But this seems to be, at least at the outset, a very different type of situation. And because it's the late 60s, and because she effectively is in the same type of lifestyle that the hippie she comes across is, she's pretty comfortable with this. Oh, my car's broken down. There's a car coming in 2 days. I'll just hang out with these guys. And, it's the late 60s. What do? You get high. So there is some stuff here that shows that, and let me just give you the 2 pages there to get a flavor of that, of her dropping some acid and then where she goes. But there's also pages I'm not comfortable with showing you because Maria Lovett's work is fairly erotic, and that definitely is a factor into the series. We end the issue on no way I can call it a cliffhanger, but it takes a very tonal shift. And I'm very interested to see in the next 4 issues where this goes. So it turned out I had thought I pre-ordered this because, I saw the description of the 60s and the cult, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm in for it. And at some point I must have taken it off the DCBS. So again, John's podcast motivated me to pick this up today. So
nice. Who put that out?
Luna. It's from Boom Studios.
Oh, yeah, Boom's been doing some interesting stuff with their creator own stuff. That's great. Cool. Yeah, I'm not familiar with her either, but she looks amazing. And then, of course, anybody who can get Jenny Frison to draw on the cover is already off to a great start.
And I do think the back cover may be telling you where the series may go. She's also from a Latin background, so the death songs and everything like that, and that may factor in. It's too early to tell, but it was a really well done story. And again, I'm not familiar with her work at all. Steve, it almost looked like you were with some of her stuff.
I love Maria Lovett's artwork, and I actually was really introduced to her through Azzarello's Faithless, because they've been working on this book together. They're in the second series, and it's just she just has a way with the sensual portrayal of her characters, where it's stylized. A lot of the sex is stylized, but there's an element of sort of easy realistic fantasy with how she depicts her characters. So you can see them out and about. They're like, the way that they pose, the way they look, you can really understand the emotional state of these characters just by how she draws them. I'm curious to actually read her writing, which if it's any way shaped by kind of how she draws her artwork, I'd just be really, really intrigued, because if it flows in the same kind of like languid, sensual way, I'd just be, head over heels for it. So Luna is something that I definitely want to pick up. Hopefully there's still some copies at my LCS or any of the LCSs, because I know that every time that I get a copy of Faithless or Faithless 2, as it is now, I feel like I've just had the store hold over a copy of Playboy or Hustler behind the counter for me, because they do.
On the show, why is Bill afraid to show those sexy parts, but we're whipping out Lobo penis?
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, there's only so much that we can actually show. We can show implied, but we can't show actual ones on the Facebook Live, because I think we would get kicked off.
Yeah, no, they're going at no.
Yeah.
That's not it.
No.
I think I can show you a hand.
We don't have a way of putting up those black bars fast.
You're listening to music. Okay, I can show you that. And one thing I have to say, Steve, the dialogue was very refreshing, to show a situation which was clearly in the late 60s and clearly steeped in the hippie culture without, the groovies and the Heymans. This was really the use of dialogue was economic. Certainly the art was the main instigator of the story, but I do think that what we did, gain from the dialogue was a very interesting story. So,
did they consult you on the dialogue, because you were like 25 then, right?
Oh, Jesus Christ, dude! Come on. That was also going to say, when you said you were in your August, I'm like, well, where the fuck am I? December 29th. Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
The following year. No.
Yeah. And I just want to say, like, right now, I know I'm under a lot of pressure for the Kenny Rogers look, so I'm doing my best. The beard's a bit more full. The hair has to grow out a bit more, but I'm doing my best,
It's good. You're in the Bob Seger phase. I like it.
Yeah. Because you got to know when to hold up.
Right. Well, Bill, I mean, this. It sounds like Luna has everything that we that we tend to enjoy. Cults,
sex.
Cults, sex, possibly like serial murder. I mean,
Count me in.
Just.
Baby, if this ends up at Watergate and Jonestown, I'm there. I'm like,
how much acid did she drop?
That should be my story. The Zodiac killer has a connection to both Watergate and Jonestown. That's the thing I should
copyright that shit.
Yeah.
Copyright William Zanowitz.
Okay, well, I guess we should start wrapping this episode up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with the segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, when you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. And we sort of do the same thing here. This is our opportunity to talk about whether it's a comic book or a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative. It's our chance to talk about anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, or in this case, viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your wolf of the week?
Well, my wolf of the week is actually something that I'm super late on. It is an Apple TV Plus or an Apple Plus or wherever the plus is, TV series. And so I'm sure it's watched by a total of maybe 10 people, maybe 11 people. It got really popular. It was popular enough to have a second season, and that's the show Dickinson, which is a really interesting, stylized, funky version of or interpretation or retelling of Emily Dickinson. So these are half-hour episodes. There's 2 seasons worth, like I mentioned. So I think they're 8-episode seasons each. But it retells with some liberties the life of Emily Dickinson in Amherst, Massachusetts, back in the mid 1800s. Haley Steinfeld, who will soon be known as the MCU's Kate Bishop, I believe. I think.
Oh yeah,
Haley
right.
Steinfeld? Yeah.
You're right.
They're filming now. She plays Emily Dickinson, and as the real Emily Dickinson probably was, very rebellious, very intelligent. Each episode takes the name or the title of the episode from a line from one of her poems, and the episode is sort of bookmarked by her creating the poem or creating the line from the poem. The music is all modern. The language is all modern. So she and her fellow, 18-year-olds all kind of speak like they just kind of walked out of Starbucks. But the costumes are absolutely gorgeous. If you like mid 19th century Victorian-inspired American costumes, so dresses are really cool and everything, and the hairstyles and everything. But the acting is incredible. The casts are great. You've got some great cameos in there. Jane Krakowski plays her mother, and in a role that I've never seen her play before. But it's fantastic. There's just so many great moments and so many great, interjections that makes it exciting. Very different from a lot of other custom dramas that have done or tried to do very similar things by updating or sticking in musical cues where they really don't belong. But I recommend it. Dickinson. It's on Apple TV Plus and nowhere else legal, I guess. But if you have the free subscription like most Apple users have, check it out. It's definitely worth it. And they're a half an hour each, so if you don't like it, you just lost 30 minutes of your day. So.
It's interesting you were talking about that because apparently Ted Lasso's viewing went like skyrocketed like crazy, like starting December 25th. And I think that's very much due to people getting iPhones and tablets for Christmas.
Do I get free Apple TV for having an iPhone?
Yeah.
What the
hell? Yeah. You get it free for like 6 months or a year.
A year, just a year. Okay. Yeah.
A year. If just go and quickly sign up. Yeah. Quickly sign up before it.
I'm gonna see if I didn't use it definitely when my phone's almost 2 years old now. Damn. Because I do want to watch.
I think they still are offering something for people.
Because I want
so check into it.
Yeah, all right. If it were, free subscription or a free 7-day trial or something.
Yeah, and there's not much on there that's specific to Apple TV, but it's worth jumping into, if not just for the show that that Steve just talked about, or Ted Lasso, or the excellent Springsteen documentary
Central Park
about the making of his Central Park. Yeah, so there's some good stuff on there.
Yes.
All right, let's go over to John, our guest. John, what is your wolf of the week?
My wolf of the week is a person who I admire very much, and that is Mr. Nick Brokenshire.
Oh, okay, cool.
I put his name in his site in the chat. He had a recent annual he's been working on the Star Wars books. I have the proud honor of being the first person ever to publish his comics for Kingbone Press. He's been, a friend, a peer for many years. I'm glad to see him working on. He just did Star Wars Adventures Annual #1, I believe it is. Pick it up. He plays guitar. He sings. He's beautiful. He's an amazing artist. He's the nicest person. By all accounts, he's the greatest person ever. And if I keep talking, I'm going to have to serve my wife the divorce papers. But please, everything he does, whatever he puts out, commission him. Please keep the man working. I am desperately begging him. I've been begging him for years to find some time in his busy schedule to work with me on comics. I just admire him so much. So certainly in a segment like this, he's the first person that pops to mind. And please do whatever you can to support Nick. He is equal parts a great human and an amazing Renaissance man.
Oh yeah,
cool.
some of his designs there are just gorgeous, just gorgeous,
just killing it. Perfect for the Star Wars book, especially for younger readers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that Vader's Castle that's a treat. If you haven't read that, it's a real treat.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I hadn't picked up. I was hoping for a trade, but yeah.
And that's interesting because that's also something that was talked about on John Running's podcast yesterday about how the Star Wars books that are coming out from IDW are, almost subversive all ages books that, the intent is to be an all ages book, but there's so much layer to the storylines that they've had. If you have checked out the Star Wars Adventure and the ancillary stories, like Vader's Castle, that there's some really good stuff there. And I think, and I like seeing all ages books that literally are all ages that can enjoy. There's some that are,
and they do a lot with like shorts. Like he's done a bunch of shorts for it.
Yeah,
they do a lot. In 12 pages, it's hard, especially in Star Wars, to tell. And they are knocking out the park. Michael Morisi does a bunch for them now. And, they're great. My kids love them too. So. Yeah,
I haven't sampled any of the Marvel stuff though that IDW has put out.
I haven't.
Yeah, I haven't. No. All right, let's go over to Bryan. Bryan, what is your Wolf of the Week?
So I have become huge fans of this Twitch channel that some drag queens out of San Francisco started doing a couple of years ago. Actually, they did local drag in San Francisco before the pandemic, but then with the pandemic, they decided, there are no shows. Let's just do it online. And I honestly think the folks over at Media Meltdown, specifically Piranha and Franzia Kafka, who are the two main producers, hosts, and run the network. They're just doing some of the coolest drag that I've seen in a long time. It's on the opposite end of what people might experience with drag from RuPaul's Drag Race. It's kitschy, pop culture referencey, but nerdy. Like I think, God, I may have talked about it here on the show, so I apologize if you've heard this before. But they did Dune, a drag show, which at one point I thought, Steve, you were going to talk about House Atreides because I actually read it.
It was one of my options to talk about today because I never read the book that Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert put out, and I heard that it was crap. But I'm enjoying the comic adaptation.
We're going to have to talk about this in the future because we may have disagreements about the quality of that comic. But
maybe
so as a Media Meltdown, they came on to my attention because of Dune, a drag show. Like that's a deep cut. So I got to interview them a couple weeks ago. It was fantastic and glorious. They do a Cinema 420 show on Tuesday. That is like Mystery Science Theater, but way further out there, even more than like you'd expect. And they do monthly Media Meltdown shows where the upcoming one is actually a video game based drag show that is very deep cut, even for me, a gamer since the beginning of gaming and Ataris. So it's FromSoft versus Bethesda. So these are two different gaming companies. Yes, yeah, right. So they're trying to just put these interesting themes out there, and then they put out a call for anyone to submit videos. They do such a fun job of hosting it. So anyway, I am putting up their link here in the chat, but if you just go on twitch.tv, look for Media Meltdown, you will find them. Glorious fun. Bill, I know you got to witness the interview, and I think you're a fan now, which is really exciting for me.
Yeah, no, that was exactly the kind of perspective that I enjoy. And, there were things like, when I was growing up in the early 90s and, working in New York City, some of the drag was very much based around off-Broadway shows. And there was one outlet called the Ridiculous Theater Company that put out some amazing stuff. If you ever can find the book, the Sam French book, the script of a play called Brother Truckers, you literally are laughing while you're reading, and I can't even tell you what it was like to have the visual included with it. And it seems that these guys are very much in that spirit. It's like 2 generations removed, but it definitely seems like and I can't imagine how stifled these guys must feel that they can't do live shows, because they seem to be born to do it.
They have. If you go on YouTube and look them up, they've got some clips of their live shows, and it's a spectacle. There was one that they did with wrestling that is like there's a little bit that lives out there, and it is remarkable. So a Media Meltdown. If you go on, look it up on Twitch. They're actually doing a show now on Thursdays. I don't know if they're going to do them every week. A little bit after ours is over, it'll still be going, and they're watching Super Mario Brothers, and then they're riffing in the chat. It is great. Media Meltdown, check them out. You will love it.
Twitch has just been so great, as an outlet for performers and musicians and so many different people. I mean, I even watch, they don't have live magic events now, so you can watch, people play on there, just so many different ways that Twitch can engage, audiences that are looking for that right now. And it's cool to hear people adapting to this difficult time.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah. If I can just say a word about drag, I do have to say that when I made some comments last week, I was very surprised from someone who I truly love and respect, that they felt that I was dismissing the merit of drag. And I do see that there are components of the bear culture that reject drag and trans people. Like Bryan, from what I saw in Orlando when I come down to visit you a couple times, there's a lot of crossover there, and not every community is like that. So I don't want people to think that just because it's nothing that I'm promoting, that it isn't something I'm supporting. I think if you have an interest in it, you definitely should. We talked about the distaste of Drag Race, and okay, I'm certain there's people that are really into reggae that aren't into Bob Marley, and I don't think drag should be the sole metric by which contemporary gay culture is measured, but because of all the amazing lesbian and bisexual and other voices. But I did want to apologize to anybody who did feel that I was dismissive of it. So I needed to get that out there.
No, it's hard. It's a conversation, and I think that's the perspective I knew you had. So I'm glad that you got to voice that.
Yeah, and certainly both you and Steve have, many times, whether it's actually been the books that we talked about. Even Steve last week with the book that you had talked about with Patty's involvement from Ireland.
Yeah.
Fanny Galactic. Fanny Galactic. That I know you two have championed a lot. So, and I'm certain we'll all keep continuing to do that. So. So for my Wolf of the Week, oh boy, I'm still a DC guy. That's my place, and this is something I wanted to bring up. It kind of sucked what happened with DC Universe, that we've transitioned into DC Universe Infinite, which is basically only a reading platform. But this is a really cool series that came out this week, and it's really tough to see it here. But if I tilt it right, you can see it's Let Them Live, unpublished tales from the DC Vault. As of this point, it's only available on the DC Universe Infinite platform. I don't know if these things will ever see print, and apparently there are dozens and dozens of stories that have never seen print, whether they were commissioned to be tryouts for people or for anthologies that didn't happen. Apparently DC has a lot of unpublished material. They're writing these framing sequences that are going to be hosted by Ambush Bug, which I think is a perfect mechanism to introduce these stories. The first one talks about Harley Quinn and her very early days as a member of the Suicide Squad, which is written by Mike Norton, and there's other people in there. Jim Zub is in there. I'm sorry. Mike Norton was part of the framing sequence. The Harley Quinn story was written by Jim Zub, and there's some other credits there. But that's something I'm really looking forward to for a publishing company that has been around, for 80 plus years at this point. That's a really cool mechanism that they have that you can finally get some stories out there. I hope it's not just limited to the more recent stories. Say like the last 2-3 years. I'm hoping they, take it a bit farther back naturally because of how I'm wired. But it is nice that since they did transition to this new format of DC Universe Infinite, that they are keeping their promise about digital only stories and new digital content that's only going to be on that platform. And that was what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting to take the archive approach, and apparently it's going to be a weekly series. So
yeah, I saw Jim Zub tweet about that he had written the story somewhere between 2011 to 14 and was like, excited to see it finally come out. But yeah, that is an interesting way to, why let those stories sit? Let's see, see what they are, man.
Yep.
Good on you, DC.
Okay. Well, I guess we're going to wrap this episode up. Jon, thank you so much for coming on. I know we're going to be promoting the Kickstarter. I know that there are going to be these stretch goals. Congratulations on getting funded, but that's not the end of the story. Excuse me, that's not the end of the story. And I also have to provide a really deep, heartfelt thanks to you because couple years ago, believe me, I got tons of these cards. The Crime Fighter Inquiry was the first full comic book that I wrote. I had written anthology stories that had appeared in the Low Concept and the Banthology anthologies, and I don't know if I ever would have taken that step. I wish we had gotten past more than one issue, and maybe after I finished. Jon, I don't know if you know this, but I've written a play. So I'm, kind of going to be fine tuning that over the next few months. But I think after that's in the can, I think I have to start writing again. And I don't know if that ever would have happened if not for Low Concepts specifically. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I have no qualms about where my career will go with writing. Again, I don't think I'll ever be uber famous or work for Marvel. So, this is why I do it. I love these kind of stories. And when people tell me that, like I said, for Nick, who lives, thousands of miles away in England or Scott, I think he's in England now. For him to tell me that was his first published work and to be so excited. Yeah, I know. I appreciate it. Although I will say legally, I cannot take responsibility for Bill Zanowitz's career and any, troubles that I've caused him since then. So, like, Don Cardenas told me the other day, yeah, you were my first or second commission, and you had my first paid work in comics, and I, thank you so much. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, like, I mean to drag you into this.
And Jon, one interesting thing, I didn't see you put a plug in. You've kind of returned to the podcasting world.
I haven't.
You haven't?
I do a YouTube show featuring Magic the Gathering. Yeah, so kind of, it's like a video podcast. We should put it out in audio, now that you mention it. So I also do a Magic the Gathering. The name of the show is The Cube Counselor. So again, social work, forcing that into everything, where I really focus on the emotions that come with Magic the Gathering and how do we cope with, why do we play Magic? Because I felt like that was like a niche in the Magic the Gathering universe that wasn't really talked about. So yeah, I've been doing that for about 8 or 10 months now. It's been good.
Cool.
That's cool.
All right. Well, I guess we're going to start wrapping this one up in a bow at this point. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can download us through iTunes, listen to us through Stitcher Radio. And as of the 16th, we will also be on Audible.
Oh, really? Cool.
We're going to be on the Amazon Audible thing that's happening.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and for other people, it's a pretty easy sign up. So just go to the Amazon page and actually go to your Libsyn page. Libsyn has the easiest link to it. If you're on Libsyn, there's a link to that, and you can get in the queue effectively for when Amazon and Audible present a specific podcast page. So looking forward to that. And you can also catch us on some of the other podcatching platforms. If you want to write to us, please send an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pittard.
I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion if you're listening to the audio version. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye.